Apple just released the brand new, totally redesigned Mac Mini with the brand new M4 chip. So the question is, are we going to upgrade? Should you upgrade? Well, like everything else in the pro audio world, the answer is complicated. Hey guys, it's Steve from Featherlight Studio, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at Apple's release of its brand new and completely redesigned Mac Mini with the M4 chip. Now this thing is a beast of a machine with some really impressive specs, especially for audio production. But I'd be willing to bet that a lot of you out there are doing a lot more than just audio production, probably quite a bit of video production as well. And when you really dive into the specifications, you need to determine whether or not the machine is going to do everything you need it to do. Now, it's got a ton of different performance and efficiency and GPU core options. So for example, our case, we've been using our trusty M1 based Mac Studio with the Max chip for the last 2 years, and it has done an amazing job in both audio and in video. So are we going to upgrade? Should you upgrade? So I'm sure by now most of you have heard the new 2024 Mac Mini with the new M4 chip brings significant upgrades, making it more powerful and compact than its predecessors. And this thing is tiny, just slightly larger than an Apple TV. The base model comes with a 10-core CPU and GPU, which Apple claims makes it up to 1.8 times faster in CPU tasks and 2.2 times faster in GPU performance than the previous M1 version. But for those who need even more power, the M4 Pro variant offers up to a 14-core CPU and 20-core GPU, making it a strong choice for intensive tasks like video editing, gaming, photo editing, and a lot more. The three base configurations all share the same 10-core CPU and GPU configuration, but the M4 Pro expands on this considerably. The three base model configurations really just differ between unified memory configurations and storage configurations. If you take the base model and you begin to add some of the more expensive options like 32 gig of unified memory, if you choose, for example, 1 terabyte storage, 10 gigabit Ethernet, the price goes up substantially, almost 3 times as much as the base model configuration. And this is a really common Apple tactic. They really want you to start out with a base model configuration that just looks so attractive that you can't pass it up. But then when you start to configure it to your own specifications and add the things you need, you get kind of roped into this pricing tier that's really tough to justify, especially in the storage department. And it's important to consider that on the back of the base model configurations, it's only Thunderbolt 4. So if you're planning on expanding your storage with an external drive, you need to take into consideration that speed, as the Pro variant of the M4 offers Thunderbolt 5, which improves on that transfer speed dramatically. If your plan is to do really intensive video and music production, and you intend on expanding your external storage with those drives, you're going to want to take advantage of those extra transfer speeds that Thunderbolt 5 offers. And once you start to configure and expand the M4 Pro variant, you still get roped into the pricing scheme that Apple has, where you start to configure things for your own specific needs. Things get expensive quickly. Now, the Apple announcement actually included 3 machines that use some variant of the M4 chip: the Mac Mini, the MacBook Pro, and the iMac. But we already have peripherals and we already have a monitor, so we don't need the iMac and we don't need the MacBook Pro. And we're going to be making our comparison against the M4 Pro variant of the chip inside the Mac Mini, since that's really the closest comparison to what we've been using here at work for the last 2 years, which is our Mac Studio, and that has the M1 Max chip inside. Now, if you're just a content creator and you're doing, mild video editing and music production, honestly, I think the base model of the M4 is a no-brainer. It will literally run circles around your old computer. It is insanely powerful and it is tiny. It'll fit on any desktop and just about any configuration. So I think that's just a slam dunk. It's an incredibly powerful machine. However, once you start getting into intensive video production and intensive music production, things get a lot muddier. Now, obviously, this comparison won't be apples to apples, as the original configurations of the Mac Studio are quite different than those offered by the M4 Pro configurations. Our original M1 Max configuration offered a 10-core CPU option, and the M4 Pro offers up to a 14-core CPU. Our M1 Max has 32 cores of GPU compared to the 20-core GPU limit in the M4 Pro. Our M1 Max has 32 gig of unified memory, and for comparison, we'll come as close to that as we can with our M4 Pro configuration. And of course, there's other things at play here as well, like the memory bandwidth and the relationship of the performance to efficiency cores, but all things being equal, we'll spec the M4 Pro as close as we can to our original Mac Studio. And when we choose similar configurations between the two machines, we come up with somewhat surprising results. The M4 Pro Mac Mini clearly outperforms the M1 Max Mac Studio in single-core performance and in multi-core performance, and this is expected as this is a 4th-generation chip compared to a 1st-generation chip. But the real surprise here is in CPU graphics performance. Now, obviously, there's a significant difference between the 32 GPU cores the Mac Studio has versus the 20 cores that the Mac Mini has. So this is really a testament to the Mac Mini's overall processing power and how it allocates resources and memory bandwidth efficiently. The Mac Studio was a more powerful machine by design when it was first introduced and still keeps up pretty significantly even today. And the real thing to take note here is that the Mac Mini M4 Pro's single-core and multi-core performance is going to make a big difference in music production. This is where it's really going to shine. It's going to take advantage of all of that efficiency and power and things like big audio libraries, big sample libraries, really heavy-duty CPU-intensive tasks and plugins like Ozone and things like that are really going to benefit from this extra muscle. However, the conundrum here is really how well the M1 Mac Studio still performs in overall graphics performance, especially video editing. And on a Mac system, this is really beneficial to programs like Final Cut Pro. So if you're a Final Cut Pro user or even a DaVinci user, this is really going to be important to you because applications like Final Cut Pro are so well optimized and can really take advantage of all this power, performance, and efficiency of both these systems. And if you have a newer Mac Studio that uses the M2 Max chip, your numbers are going to even be closer to the performance of the Mac Mini M4 Pro chip. And its graphic performance is going to even be higher than that. So it's going to make it a lot more difficult for you to determine whether or not you want to upgrade to the new Mac Mini if you're starting from a place like the Mac Studio M2 Max versus the M1 Max. All right, so what do we make of all this? Well, I think there's, 3 or 4 basic scenarios that really justify you upgrading to the new M4 Mac Mini. And the first and most obvious is if you're coming from an older Intel-based system. If you've got an older Intel-based Mac Mini or MacBook Pro or iMac, this is really a no-brainer. It's a fantastically powerful system in an amazingly small package, and it will literally run circles around those older systems. So that's pretty obvious. Secondly, I think if you're coming from maybe an early model Mac Mini, so an M1 or even an M2 based Mac Mini system like that, I think that's still pretty justifiable simply because there's so much more power to be gained and it's so much smaller. And one of the other ones I think is that if you're coming from maybe a Windows-based system and you want to get into a Mac-based system fairly inexpensively, the base model M4 is hard to beat. It is just incredibly powerful, it's unbelievably small, and it's going to work on just about any desktop configuration. And I think maybe one of the last really justifiable reasons is if you're putting together a mobile system, if you're trying to put together the most powerful mobile system you can in the smallest amount of space, it's pretty tough to beat the M4 just because of its overall size and portability. And this is really true for just the regular M4 or the M4 Pro variant. They're incredibly powerful and the package is undeniably portable. So what to do with your old gear? Do you trade it in? Do you sell it on the open market? You might be surprised to find that there's quite a few uses for your older gear. So in addition to using our current Mac Studio system that we run the studio with here, we still use our old Intel-based MacBook Pro. This thing is a mirror image of our current system and can be used in case of, any kind of failure as a backup, but we also use it as our live recording rig. And it's perfect for that because it's totally self-contained. It's got a screen and everything, some preamps and an audio interface, and we're good to go. And we actually still use our old original Mac Mini. This is our Intel-based Mac Mini. So You know, we can't really trade in either one of these. Apple doesn't give you much unless it's really last year's model. And if you want to sell it on eBay, you know, you're going to get what, 50 bucks? It's not even really worth doing that. We use it as a server backup. So your gear that you're trading up from might actually have more uses if you hang on to it. It kind of depends on your workflow, but if you have a use for it, really consider that before you just get rid of it or sell it for super cheap. It might actually have some, you know, some real use in your workflow or your studio setup. And of course, there are some scenarios why you might want to wait for the inevitable Mac Studio M4. It's likely to have more performance and efficiency core options, more GPU options, and faster memory bandwidth. One of the first reasons you might want to wait for the M4 Mac Studio is if you already have a fully expanded Mac Mini 2 Pro. This is still a very powerful and capable machine even today, and if you plan on getting an M4 Mac Studio and that architecture later, it might be worth waiting. Another scenario that might be worth waiting for the M4 Mac Studio is if you already have a fully expanded M1 Mac Studio or M2 Mac Studio. These are both incredibly powerful machines, especially in the video department. And if you're doing a lot of multimedia work, not just music production, but video editing, these machines are still very powerful, and this is going to be a lot harder to justify that upgrade. And of course, one of the big reasons you might want to wait on an upgrade of any kind is if you already own the MacBook Pro M3 Pro or Max configuration. This is, of course, last year's machine. It is blazingly fast, and depending on the configuration, can outperform the M4 Pro chip. This is probably the hardest position to justify an upgrade from, as the massive performance specs and efficiency of this machine makes it relevant for many years to come. So as you can see, the brand new redesigned Mac Mini with the M4 chip has a ton of impressive specs. It's a beast of a machine for music production. And whether or not you should upgrade from where you are probably has everything to do with your current workflow. I would say if you're coming from an older Intel-based machine, then it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute beast of a machine. It will run circles around anything you have back in the Intel world. However, in the real world of running a studio, especially for production where there's lots of other things going on in the background, it isn't quite so clear-cut. So in our case, are we going to upgrade our Mac Studio? The truth is probably not. We're probably going to wait and see what the next generation of Mac Studios look like, because our current generation, even though it's back in the M1 days, that Max chip is impressive, and still to this day, we haven't even come close to maxing out its capability for music production specifically. Now, in the video side of things, it's a lot more taxing, and we're getting to the point where we're really starting to see some of the upper limits of its video production abilities, but still, even to this day, 6 days a week in a working studio, this thing has been crushing it. So I think we're going to wait on our end and see what the new generation of Mac Studios look like, just because the M4 chip is so impressive, and we'll see how that relates and kind of filters down. Hey, if you learned something or if this was helpful in any way, please hit the subscription and notification bells. It really does help keep a channel like this going, and it helps me make more videos like this. Stay safe and be creative. Add something creative to the world. It could really use it. Take care. We'll catch you guys in the next video.